We're back. All right. So come on in, sit on down, and let me just tell you the truth. Let me just rip the Band-Aid off real quick for you. Harmon Phoenix kind of sucked. So this isn't just me trying to make like a hot take video where I'm like, hey, this new thing that everyone's like super jazzed about sucks. It's a little bit that though, but not entirely. I want to be fair, but also honest. This is not like a sponsored video. This isn't like a thing. This is just I bought film and I was like jazzed about it. The results, not so great. So I got a few of them here. I shot through this roll pretty much tail end of 2023. My initial intent with this roll was just to put it through a bunch of different conditions and see what it looks like. The last month of my life has not been very lenient in my time, so it really ended up being more of just like, hey, I have my camera with me that has the film loaded into it, so here you go. So the first shots I actually took in this coffee shop that set up in Portland. Kind of expensive coffee if you ask me, and like not really all that great, but it was really cool, like aesthetically very pleasing cafe. So the first shot here is of my girlfriend, and you can see here the lights coming in through the window, get this nice Rembrandt on her cheek. However, her face is absolutely blasted with light. It wasn't like that bright, like the contrast was not as sharp as it would lead you to believe in this photo, but there's so much light in the rear. And on the shadows, there's zero detail whatsoever, zero attention whatsoever. It almost has like the boosts completely blasted in either direction. Like there's very high contrast, not a lot of leniency. And we'll go on to the next photo. It's kind of the similar situation here. I got a cup of black coffee, which again was not very good, very expensive. I mean, it was like $5 for a cup of coffee. What the fuck are we doing here? Anyway, and you can see that there's like this light emanating from her hand that makes it look like the fucking gauntlet of Thanos. It's just like solar charged and a complete abyss where the rest of her jacket would be. It's just gone. There's nothing there. And in the bottom here, you just see like these little specklings of detail, but it's not actually like the floor. It's very bizarre. Going up to this next shot, this is just like the tree. I was kind of impressed with some of the detail I got here, but again, in the backdrop, it looks like a nuke just went off. Like it just does not deal well with highlights whatsoever. Also doesn't deal well with shadows, it would appear. And I believe that I shot this at 200 too. So I was being like fairly generous and shooting at a box speed, and it's still just this shot in particular, like she had a latte with like some neat art on it, so I wanted to get a shot of that, and there was like some glitter, but again, it's just blasts out. I will say this little accent of light on her hair here is kind of nice, but again, I'm blinded by her hand, and she's not like me. She's not very white. Like listen, between us girls, my lineage is Scottish and Norwegian, which is pretty much as white as you can get. I think about the sun rising in the morning and I get a sunburn pretty much. Like I'm not saying that like I'm very white. I reflect light. Oftentimes I'd be camping as a kid, and if we didn't have flashlights, we're out in the woods at night, I would just take my shirt off and the moonlight reflecting off my skin. It was like twilight. Okay. I'm just beaming light off into the woods. That is how white I am. So like, I understand. I get it. She's not that white though. And like the way that her hand is just like reflecting and blasting light, you'd think it was like the high beams of a car. It's insane to me. And again, like I don't recall it being this bright there. So I don't know what the film is, but it's like, and then this shot too, like the very next shot, the same condition. You can see here that like the light on her hand is a little bit dimmer, but then like there's no fall off into the shadows here whatsoever. Like it's either way too bright are way too dark, and all of the colors are tweaked. And I mentioned this to a buddy I was talking to earlier today, where it's like, this reminds me a lot of the Color Silbera film that I shot in Scotland, which I loved. I absolutely adored, because it had this like really unique twist on how it interpreted color that wasn't like something you'd seen before necessarily, at least that I can remember. But it was like you still got all the detail, but like this nice little stylized twist. And I want to say that that's what they're doing here, but like it first has to be good. And like I just don't see this. I'm like, oh yeah, nice. I see this and just like, why did I spend money on this? And it like, it's a shitty thing to feel, because it's like, this is the company's like first venture into color film. And like, I'm happy to have supported it genuinely. But at the same vein, it's like, could have let this cook a little bit longer, I think. Now, we'll move on to the next shot. I've got more thoughts on that. Again, we're in the coffee shop here. I really do like the way that the light's kind of coming in on our hands, and I feel like had I known this is going to be the effect, I probably would have planned for a little bit different of an environment to shoot this in. But I was kind of thinking this would just be a good, interesting 200 speed film. I did not know it was going to be like this. The deep color in her jacket here, I think, plays very nicely with the light and the shadow. But again, the outdoors just looks like, I don't know, like the light that you're not supposed to go to, if you know what I mean. We'll keep moving along here. Here we have a shot that I don't hate necessarily, but this is where a disclaimer comes in. During this time, my camera that I was shooting this through started to fail me. And unfortunately, I was going on vacation, so I was not nearby many tools. So I wasn't able to fix the camera, but it was a Spotmatic. The shutter was really dry, so the mirror was sticking. Because basically there's the two curtains. We don't have to talk about it. Doesn't matter. Point being is I was basically blind firing a lot of these shots. So let's not focus too much on the composition and the misfocus. I'm not going to discuss that as part of like my critiques on the film itself, because ultimately that falls on me, the photographer, for not taking good photos, which again, I don't really take good photos in the best conditions, but especially in these conditions where I'm just like, this looks fine. This one, I do believe I think I fired blind as well. There was a couple in here that I think I saw, but I think this one was blind. And I don't hate this shot, to be quite frank. I think that there's like interesting, like cool elements to it, and cool temperature wise. We have like this really deep green and blue. And I think that pairs nicely with the orange radiance from the front of the engine. But, it's a picture from a plane. Like, you've seen 1,000 of these. This is a grittier, grainier take on it. And I kind of like that mix of that shifting color tone from the bottom of the turbine towards the top, where it's like orange and then like fading into turquoise a little bit. I think that's kind of cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. And this shot here, I do think was a blind one as well. It looks very fake to me, quite frankly. I remember we missed our flight, basically. We had to take a morning flight. So this was like the sun rising. We were on the west side of the plane. So this is the light hitting the clouds on the other side, basically. And it just had this like really like soft, velvety look to it that I wanted to capture. And I think it did a fairly good job of that. Like, I'm very happy with this shot. If it was in better focus, that'd be cool. And maybe a smidge lighter, that would have been cool. But honestly, with how it looks like a very soft, pleasant morning. So I'm happy with that. This one, not so much. A lot of vignetting around the corners. I'm not entirely sure if that was the film or if that was something that I did. I don't think so, but it could have been me. And you don't get the same light off of the plane wing as you do in the first one. And then we have one that I took horizontal or vertically, because I don't really remember why, but I was like, I think that was because it kept kind of fucking up. The mirror kept sticking, so I was like, let me just take a few, and maybe one of these will be good. So one of them was good. This next one is hideous to me. It's just green and like kind of pukey. There's not a whole lot of detail anywhere, really. The mountains in the background look like completely washed out and faded. The sky above looks just completely fake. I don't know. I'm not really fond of this one. And then this shot too. Don't shoot this film indoors, I think really is the message here. Because here we have just like a simple indoor setting. There's light coming in from the right side of frame. And there's also like ambient light from the other lights in the house. But you couldn't tell that because it is so dark and dingy looking. It looks like I'm in like a meth dungeon in the 90s in Seattle. Like this looks like a setting for a Pacific Northwest crime film from the 80s or 90s. Like it just looks dingy, or really early 2000s, I would say. And like this place is not dingy at all. Like it's my parents' house, so it's really nice. Like it's very beautiful. You miss all of the colors really, except for like the most vibrant ones, which kind of pop through, but everything else is just like this sickly green milieu. And again, that's probably on me because I should have like shot this film in better circumstances. So like I will take that, but at the same time, I like things that work well in conditions, and I feel like there's so much variance from shot to shot that I can't really pinpoint where it would be best. Like there's no frame in this where it's like, oh, you know what? If I tweak this, if I tweak that, it would have been perfect because it would have worked for that shot. But then the next exposure, which is in similar conditions, looks completely different. And this shot here is just like a little Christmas corner that my mom has set up. You get some like nice flaring from some of the lights. And again, I think that this one was kind of no vision as to what I was shooting. And it shows because the framing on this is terrible. But again, it's like this green, sickly tint to everything. And then the next shot of my dad is just horrible. Like, the outside is still pretty blown out. The inside is completely underexposed and terrible. There's like little patches of detail here and there, but there's nothing like definitive. There's no image here. It's just a kind of bleh. And you would think like, okay, maybe if I did underexpose for the inside, then there'd be more detail on the outside, but there isn't. Like there's just no detail outside. There's no detail inside. So it's like, what am I exposing for here? You know, the inside is underexposed and the outside should be a little bit better exposed than it is. It still looks pretty blown out to me. And then there's this shot here, which is a little bit more of what I was talking about, where the outside now, and these are shot in the same settings, the outside is properly exposed to some degree. The inside is completely underexposed, and you see a lot more detail in the background, what I was kind of talking about, where like this is the first time I'm like looking outside and actually can see something. It doesn't look like it's being completely blasted with light. And this was a very overcast day. Like it was a very overcast desert winter day. So it wasn't like a huge variation of light here. And you can still see even in the kitchen, there is still some detail, but the shadow, there's just absolutely nothing to pull from. If I wanted to like get this exposure of my mom, I wouldn't be able to, because like she doesn't exist in this. Like it's just a blob of color. Like it's just a shadow. So I'm a little bit frustrated. And then this one, my mom's smiling. She looks great. And this was one where I couldn't see anything. And I actually nailed focus, which I was very proud of because I was shooting at like 1.4 too. And you can see just this faintest outline. And again, in the backdrop, it's like this really hyper saturated, overexposed mess. And on the inside, it's this hyper saturated, underexposed mess. What am I missing here? Like, how am I supposed to split the difference if there's no difference to split? You know what I mean? And I think that kind of leads to the next point of this film that I wanted to discuss, where this is not a film that I would trust. This is not a film I could recommend to somebody, because if someone's like, oh, hey, I'm going to go out and I want to take some beautiful pictures of the sunrise, I could think of a few things that I would probably recommend to them. Or, hey, I'm going to go travel and I just want to get some like good shots of the architecture, good shots of some people. Or, hey, I just want to go shoot a lot of photos. I have recommendations for those things and it might not be the best thing, but it's just something that like I've used in similar situations that I think, hey, you might enjoy this. I don't know who I would recommend this film to. I don't know in what circumstances this film would be ideal to use. It doesn't seem as a film that I can be like, I don't want to put my stamp of approval on this film, basically. It does not seem like film that I can like, boop, use this. Because like I don't want somebody to be like, hey, you ruined my Christmas vacation because I only brought this roll of film on your recommendation and it turned out like shit. You know, like, I don't want to harbor that. Okay, I already ruined my own Christmas vacation with these terrible photos. Just kidding. I took a lot of other photos and had a great time. But the point remains, this is not a film that I will trust in the future because I can't. And I know when Orwo 500 NC was coming out, some people had like complaints, the muted color tones and all of this. They didn't like it. However, whatever. Totally fair. Feel however you want to feel about it. Who am I to judge? I personally really enjoyed it. And I would take that film over this any day of the week. That film to me is something that I can rely on because I know that the quality is going to be consistent from frame to frame to frame. It's going to give you a lot of latitude to edit if you so choose, but it's also like not going to ruin your images unless you ruin them, which I do often. But this, I feel like I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place. No matter what I do, the image is still going to come out looking meh. What is the purpose of this film? What is the intent usability of this film? And I know that there are things that are like, oh, hey, use it in this condition, whatever. And again, on me for not doing it. But I do think that you should, have film that just kind of works sometimes. I wanted to talk about it because I was pretty stoked, and I still am, about Harman releasing film. I do think it's just overall good, even if it's not for me. If someone out there enjoys it, more power to them. But I think for me, it's cool to see new players in the game, the market kind of evolving, and not everything's going to be a hit. There's going to be some misses. Not everything's going to be for me. I'm going to dislike things. I've disliked things in the past. I'll dislike things in the future. But there's also going to be things I like. So I'm not the arbiter of right and wrong in this market, but I will say I was very disappointed with this experience. I think had I had foresight, I wouldn't have spent my money this way. I would have bought something different or just not bought anything at all and saved my money. But that's where we're at. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helps you inform your purchasing decisions. But at the end of the day, I just hope you enjoyed yourself. So thanks for tuning in, catching up. And I'll catch you on the next one.